Alright, buckle up folks, because while practically everyone and their dog has an AR-15, and hey, it's a solid rifle for plinking cans or defending the homestead, no doubt, aren't you just a little bit intrigued by what else is out there? We're talking rifles that might punch a bigger hole, run cleaner than a preacher's conscience, or just plain feel more satisfying to send rounds down range with. In this video, we're gonna lay out 7 contenders that, in my book, arguably give the trusty AR-15 a serious run for its money. We'll get hands-on with some cutting-edge bullpups from Steyr, that's pronounced Steyr, by the way, and IWI. We're gonna check out a piston-driven carbine from CZ that feels like an AR designed by someone who actually listens to shooters, and FNS top-tier rifle, engineered for the tip of the spear and price to match. For those of you craving that Cold War battle rifle feel, with all the authority that implies, we'll examine a hard-hitting .308 Winchester thumper from PTR that runs on a slick roller-delayed system and gobbles up cheap surplus mags like they're going out of style. Then we've got a monolithic marvel from Palmetto State Armory and a fascinating legal workaround wonder from Franklin Armory, both shattering conventions and making waves in their own unique ways. If you've ever thought the AR-15 might not be the absolute last word in rifle design, you're in the right place. You might just find your next obsession. CZ Bren 2. Those Czech engineers, they've never been ones to just sit back and copy homework. So when their military CZ-805 felt a tad on the hefty side and maybe a little rough around the edges, they hit the reset button. The Bren 2 that rolled out a few years later, man, it shed nearly a pound, ditched those chunky aluminum forgings for a sleeker, monolithic upper, and blessed the bolt carrier with a short-stroke piston that runs astonishingly cool for a 5.56 NATO rifle. It lands on American shores as the Bren 2 MS carbine, sporting a 16-inch cold hammer-forged barrel, a non-reciprocating charging handle you can swap to either side, and a polymer lower that pops off slicker than snot on a doorknob, making caliber or trigger pack swaps literally a one-pin operation. Availability in shops has gotten better, but the manufacturer's suggested retail price still hovers just a hair north of $2,000. CZ lists that 5.56 carbine at $2,199 in 2025, and most dealers are within $100 of that. Under recoil, this thing feels like an AR that's been meticulously tuned with an adjustable gas block and a perfectly weighted buffer system. Except you never get that annoying puff of carbon to the face from the charging handle gap. Mag changes, pure AR muscle memory. The ambi controls are truly ambidextrous, perfectly mirrored, and that folding stock clicks into 5 different length of pull positions, plus it collapses down flat for stowing in a vehicle. Field stripping it takes about half the time of a direct impingement gun because all the gunk stays up front on that piston cup. Even the 2-position gas regulator is easy to manipulate with gloves on. Twist it for standard ammo, click it forward one more notch when you're running a suppressor, and you'll keep that brass ejecting smartly without beating up your carrier key. Slap some decent glass on that full-length 1913 top rail, and the Bren will keep 5-shot groups inside 1.4 minutes of angle with Black Hill 77 grain TMKS, plenty accurate for taking out coyotes out to 400 yards. Franklin Armory Reformation RS7. Now, Franklin Armory, they just love to give the regulators a friendly poke, and the RS7 is their most deliciously cheeky move yet. Normally, a 7.5-inch barrel on an AR platform lands you squarely in tax stamp territory. But Franklin's patented straight-land rifling, it cleverly sidesteps the National Firearms Act because the projectile never actually gets a spin. Legally speaking, it ain't a rifle, and it ain't a shotgun. It's just a firearm. The feds tried to shut this down back in 2019, but the courts didn't see it their way. So now, the RS7 is listed on their website for $1,179 in either 5.56 NATO or 300 AC blackout. If you opt for the BFS3 binary trigger package, that bumps the price up to about $1,270. On the bench, that little stubby tube will print 3-inch clusters at 50 yards with 62 grain green tip. That's perfectly acceptable when you remember the bore isn't imparting a traditional spin. Franklin even sells their own proprietary fin-stabilized ammo that flies truer, though standard FMJ still groups minute of bad guy at typical home defense distances. The forged upper and lower feel mil-spec because, well, they are mil-spec. Any standard AR-15 lower receiver can host this RS7 upper if you decide you want to go the registered short-barreled rifle route later. The gas impulse is definitely lively, but a good B5 Bravo stock and a decent compensator keep muzzle rise manageable enough that even the binary mode stays controllable. Firing one round on the pull and another on the release, you can empty 30-round Lancer mags in about 3 seconds, which is just an absolute riot during a carbine class. For shooters whose wallets can handle the ammo bill, and who absolutely loathe paperwork, the fact that you can legally toss the RS7 in your truck cab in most free states is a massive plus. Steyr August. Austria's Army Universal Guer, or AUG as we all know it, first graced parade grounds way back in 1978, looking like something straight out of a sci-fi movie. Yet, here we are, nearly 50 years later, and the AUG still sets the standard for reliable bullpup rifles. Current US imports typically arrive as the AUG A3M1, with options for either a NATO-spec magazine well or Steyr's iconic translucent waffle mags. The average new in-box price hovers around $1,850, a figure that's actually trended down a bit since Steyr got their Alabama plant up and running and improved distribution. Bullpup skeptics always moan about the trigger feel, but Steyr's two-stage mechanism has smoothed out considerably over the years. The break weight on current models is just a hair under 6 pounds, and the reset is almost as crisp as a mil-spec AR trigger that's been upgraded with a nickel boron kit. Because the action sits right behind your ear, that 16-inch barrel delivers full 5.56 NATO velocity, while the rifle's overall length stays shorter than a 10-inch barreled AR pistol. A quick-change barrel latch lets you yank the barrel off in seconds, perfect for stowing in a backpack or swapping to the 18 or 20-inch tubes that Steyr USA has promised will be hitting dealer shelves again this year. The gas regulator has 3 positions: normal, adverse conditions, and suppressor, so you can keep your brass ejecting smartly at 2 o'clock even after a grueling muddy match. When it comes to reliability, the AUG barely needs a glance at a cleaning rod until you're 4,000 or 5,000 rounds deep. The chrome plating in the long-stroke piston and that beefy AUG extractor claw keep things chugging along when a direct impingement bolt would be coughing and sputtering. Accuracy tests with 55-grain Fiocchi FMJ consistently yield 1.5-inch groups at 100 yards, but this rifle really sings with 69-grain Match Kings, punching ragged cloverleafs tight enough to make some lightweight AR carbines blush. The recoil impulse comes straight back into your shoulder pocket, and that integral vertical grip also does double duty as a heat sink during sustained fire. Once you get the hang of rocking those magazines in and out, G3 style, reloads feel surprisingly intuitive. PSA JKL. Palmetto State Armory, PSA, built its reputation slinging value-priced ARs. Then they went and surprised everybody by dropping a piston-driven upper that bolts right onto any mil-spec lower. But here's the kicker: it completely deletes the buffer tube, so you can slap on a folding stock and actually shoot it while it's folded. That whole project evolved into the JKL, now offered as complete rifles in 5.56 NATO, 300 AC blackout, and just this year, 308 Winchester. A 13.7-inch 5.56 model with a pinned and welded muzzle brake keeps owners out of NFA trouble and carries a manufacturer's suggested retail price around $1,299, though you can sometimes catch kits for under $1,000 during their big sales weekends. The JKL's one-piece upper looks monolithic because, well, it is. The handguard and receiver are machined from a single billet of aluminum, so your optics and laser aiming devices hold their zero even after taking tumbles that would definitely tweak a traditional barrel nut system. PSA borrowed the long-stroke gas piston concept from the AKM, but they refined it with a 4-position, click-adjustable gas valve. Dial it to 1 for suppressed subsonic loads, crank it to 4 for those filthy range days, and the bolt still feels smoother than many budget ARs right out of the box. Recoil has that firm initial push that's typical of long-stroke carriers, but if you throw on a hydraulic buffer, you'll find that quick follow-up shots are entirely doable. The charging handle is up front on the left side, SCAR style, which lets right-handed shooters rack the action without having to lift their elbow off the magazine. Mag dumps will heat up that barrel shroud pretty quickly, but PSA smartly vented the gas block cap and machined generous cuts along the upper to improve airflow. During a recent carbine class, mine ran 1,200 rounds on gas position 2 without a single cleaning, and the only hiccup was a single light primer strike on some questionable steel-cased ammo. That ability to reliably digest cheap cartridges while still feeling familiar to AR shooters explains why the waiting list for new shipments still often hits 5 digits. PTR 91A3S. A whole lot of rifle shooters have chased that nostalgic feeling of Cold War battle rifles, but then they see the prices for vintage HK91s hitting $4,000 on Gunbroker and understandably hesitate. PTR Industries stepped right into that void with US-made clones based on genuine German blueprints. The current A3S variant comes with an 18-inch tapered barrel, a welded Picatinny top rail, and that classic paddle magazine release, straight out of the G3 parts diagram. Street prices tend to fluctuate, but a brand new A3S usually rings up around $1,650. That slots it below most M1As and well under what you'd pay for modern 308 ARs of similar accuracy. Roller-delayed blowback means there's no gas system, so the felt recoil comes on pretty brisk. Still, the straight stock design keeps muzzle climb manageable once you accept that 7.62 NATO isn't exactly a pussycat cartridge. The factory iron sights, a rotating diopter drum in the rear and a hooded front post, are capable of respectable precision once you get them zeroed. My sample consistently held 2-inch groups at 100 yards with 147 grain ball ammo and nudged down closer to 1 minute of angle with 168 grain Federal Gold Medal match. Braskets launched about 15 feet forward and to the right, usually fluted and dented, which reloaders absolutely hate but range spectators seem to love. You do hear stories about quality control floating around online, and I've personally seen a customer's rifle with a low bolt gap that needed warranty shims. PTR is generally quick to respond and cover shipping, but it's always wise to inspect the lugs, cocking tube welds, and bolt gap before you swipe your credit card. On the bright side, magazines for this thing cost less than a cheap pizza. Surplus aluminum G3 mags can be had for around $8 a piece. You can throw 20 of them in a range bag and still not have spent what 2 SR-25 pattern mags would set you back. The handling is definitely different from AR ergonomics. There's no last round bolt hold open, the cocking handle is up on the forend, and then there's that glorious HK slap to send the bolt home. The safety lever sits perfectly under your thumb, and with that paddle release installed, you can drop an empty mag almost as fast as you can on an AR-10. Many owners end up replacing the original fixed stock with a collapsible or a spur-adjustable unit to cure the infamous cheek slap, but even bone stock, this rifle is a rugged dirt-simple tool that absolutely channels the same battlefield DNA as its German granddaddy. FN SCAR 16S NRCH. Special Operations Command went to FN and asked for a carbine that could run suppressed, swap barrels in the field, and just shrug off the grime from the deserts of Afghanistan to the jungles of the Philippines. The result, the SCR-16, has matured into today's NRCH variant, which stands for Non-Reciprocating Charging Handle. It rides on a beefier bolt carrier, and mercifully, there's much less reciprocating mass to smack your thumbs. FN lists this rifle with a manufacturer's suggested retail price of $3,839. You might find deals a few hundred lower, but nobody's ever gonna claim the SCAR is a budget-friendly option. Spend a day behind one though, and you start to understand where all that money goes. The short-stroke piston cycles softer than its long-stroke cousins, all while keeping the bolt and carrier sparkling clean for hundreds of rounds. A 2-position gas regulator lets you tune the back pressure for suppressor use, and the free-floated chrome-lined barrel slides out with just a single captive torque screw, allowing armorers to swap to a 10, 14, or 18-inch barrel in minutes. That monolithic upper rail gives night vision users rock-solid zeros, even with clip-on thermal imagers, and the polymer lower absorbs enough recoil impulse that the rifle weighs just over 7 pounds unloaded. The controls mirror AR placement but are fully ambidextrous: magazine release, safety levers, even the bolt catch. The folding stock adjusts for both length of pull and cheek height, has storage for a cleaning kit, and collapses down to 27 inches overall, short enough for getting in and out of helicopters. Some of the early models were notorious for beating up optics under recoil. FN addressed that by thickening the receiver walls and changing the carrier design to tame those harmonics. And the current NRCH version will happily run red and magnifier combos all day long without loosening a single screw. Range accuracy hovers around 1.25 minutes of angle with 77 grain OTM loads, which is excellent for a service carbine that'll eat anything labeled 5.56 NATO. Recoil pushes straight back, and the muzzle barely lifts because that piston weight rides nice and low. The trigger pull, which was once a common complaint, has been refined to break cleanly at around 5 pounds with minimal creep. Between its barrel change flexibility, its left-hand friendliness, and its mud-proof internals, the SCAR clearly demonstrates why armories from France to Malaysia issue it in significant quantities. Tavor X95. The Israeli Defense Forces got tired of lugging M4 carbines, with their traditional swinging stocks, through cramped urban alleyways. So they fielded a bullpup that kept a full-length barrel while shaving precious inches off the overall length. The current IWI Tavor X95 is the refined descendant of that program, and American import models typically average about $1,760 new, though you might see the OD green and FD colorways fetch a slight premium. From the shoulder, this gun balances right over the pistol grip, not out towards the muzzle, which means carrying it on patrol feels a lot less fatiguing than an equally heavy AR. A 16.5-inch cold hammer-forged barrel wears a 1 in 7 twist to stabilize those heavy match bullets that many IDF units favor, and the chrome lining stretches the service life out beyond 20,000 rounds. The long-stroke piston system runs on 2 settings. Keep it on 1 for consistent brass ejection with standard ammo, or flip it to 2 for suppressor work. The controls are definitely different from AR muscle memory, but they're deliberately clustered right near your firing hand. The safety rotates 90 degrees under your thumb, the bolt catch is located behind the magazine well, and the magazine release sits forward where your index finger naturally rests. Once you get the manual of arms down, the X95 actually proves quicker to reload than most bullpups because you never have to move your firing hand off the grip. Integrated flip-up iron sights fold down flush into the top rail, and the front sight sports a tritium that glows just enough for dusk drills without needing any batteries. The 3, 6, and 9 o'clock rails are hidden under polymer covers. Pop those off, and you can bolt on lights, pressure pads, or even the new MLOK conversion inserts that TAVR aftermarket companies have been shipping for a while now. The ambidextrous potential here goes beyond just swappable safety levers. Both the charging handle and the ejection port can be migrated to the opposite side with a new bolt install, so left-handed shooters don't have to eat hot brass. During a recent night match, my X95 ran 300 rounds, lubricated but uncleaned, including a brutally dusty stage, and it still cycled 55-grain steel-cased ammo like it was premium Mark 262. Group sizes consistently stayed under 2 inches at 100 yards, which is more than precise enough for any defensive role. In tight hallway corners, this rifle tracks like a large pistol, the muzzle never scrapes the drywall, and you still get the velocity that short-barreled rifles have to sacrifice. And that's a wrap, folks. Which one of these bad boys would you trust over your go-to AR, and what's your reasoning? Let us know down in the comments. Be sure to hit that like button, share this with your gun buddies, subscribe if you haven't already, and don't forget to click that little bell icon so you never miss out on what's coming up next.